welcome to Lil's Vintage World. This video is going to be a wrap up of 3 more books in the British Library Women Writers book series. If you haven't read any books in this series before, I highly recommend it. It is a series of books that the British Library are republishing forgotten works of fiction by women authors from the early part of the 20th century, and so far they've all been really great. So I have 3 to wrap up today for you. I have done a video previously which I'll share for you up here, which you can go and watch, which was my first wrap up of 3 of the first books that came out in the series. So let's get straight into it. The first one that I want to chat about today is Dangerous Ages by Rose Macaulay. This is a book from the 1920s, 1921 to be precise, and it is about this one family and the different women within that family and how they're all at different points in their lives, they're all at different ages. Some in that family are like 20, some in their family are in their 80s, and where they are at in life and how they feel life is going, and about social change and development for women of this period. Now, of course, in 1921, when this was published, the First World War had just happened, the Great War had just happened. Women's lives post-war were very different to pre-war and during the war, and it's now a time where older generations still have this kind of almost like a Victorian aspect on what a woman's life should be, whereas the younger generation that are coming through have very different ideas of what they want their life to be and what they expect their life to be. And it's really fascinating to get these kind of different sides to it. I would say this book is a great kind of social history book and social history take on women's lives. I just thought it was really good. I like Rose Macaulay's writing style. I've read Crew Train by Rose Macaulay. I've also read a short story by Rose Macaulay, and I think she's a great author. I want to continue reading more of her work in the future, and I'm really glad that the British Library republished this. In all honesty, I think Crew Train is just that little bit better than this one, but I'm still so glad that I read it and still think it's really good, and recommend it to you if you haven't read it already. So that's the first one. The next one that I want to kind of wrap up and recommend to you is Tea is So Intoxicating by Mary Essex. This is a book from the 1950s. Now, Mary Essex is a pen name for Ursula Bloom, isn't it? Is it Ursula Bloom? Yeah, Ursula Bloom. Now, Ursula Bloom, I believe, wrote like 560 books, something like, you know, out of this world. And she wrote under various pen names, including Mary Essex. So this is about a man called David. Now, David falls in love with a married woman called Germaine. Germaine is a married mother. She's a wife, she's a mother, and she and David elope. And they elope and they go to this new village, and then she ends up obtaining a divorce from her husband, and they subsequently, her and David, then get married. But word has got out in said village, because of course this is 1950s, think Miss Marple, think Map and Lucia. Word has got out in the village life that they're not like a true couple, that she is divorced, that when they first came here, that they weren't married when they first came here and living in sin, which is a big no-no. And David has the idea that he wants to run a tea shop in his new like country cottagey house. He wants to run a tea shop there. And I have to say, this book was just so delightful. I really liked it. It was my first Ursula Bloom or Mary Essex, and I just thought it was great. I felt it was very Miss Marple-y, like St. Mary Mead, but without the murder. Just the you know, in Agatha Christie's Miss Marple, they talk about tea and scandal. I felt like this was literally tea and scandal because he sets up a tea shop. It was lovely. The writing was brilliant. The characters were wonderful. The pacing was marvellous. It was such an enjoyable book, and I can't wait to actually give this a reread, and also can't wait to read more. I really want to read more Mary Essex and Ursula Bloom. I just want to read so much by this author. I mean, over 500 books. I'm sure that there's going to be something else that I'm going to love by her. So Thank you, British Library, for reprinting this, because this was an absolute joy. Such a lovely joy. Such an afternoon book as well. And then finally, the last book that I have to recommend to you and review for you is Father by Elizabeth von Arnim. I am a huge fan of Elizabeth von Arnim, and this book sealed that for me. I think she's just wonderful. So this book is about a woman called Jen. Now, Jen makes a promise to her dying mother. Page 1, this isn't a spoiler, this is page 1. So Jen's mother is dying, and she makes a promise to her mother that she's going to support her father. Her father is a writer, and so she does that. Her mother passes away, and she supports her father in his writing, helping him to work. She stays at home, and all the things that she should be doing, you know, late teens, early 20, into her 20s, like getting married and, you know, thinking about house and family and all that type of thing, she doesn't do, because she stays with her dad. And 12 years later, Jen is 33, and she feels like life is, you know, slipping by, sort of thing. But then her father suddenly comes out to her one day and says, "I'm getting remarried." And Jen's like, "You what now?" And off he goes to get remarried, and he gets married to a woman much younger than himself. He's 65, much younger than Jen, who's 33. Jen says, I think she's about 19, 20. She's very, very young, certainly in comparison to her father. Not that age matters in a relationship, but she's a much younger woman, a complete shock to Jen. But Jen is very much like, okay, well, I need to move out then, because my dad is going to live here with his new wife. So she has £100 left to her from her mother, in which she can use, and so off she goes to find a place to live and start her life independently without her father there. And it is a wonderful, charming, funny book. I loved how Elizabeth von Arnim, I don't know why we call her Elizabeth, well I do know why we call her Elizabeth von Arnim's name is not Elizabeth von Arnim, by the way, her name's Mary, but she's called Elizabeth because she wrote Elizabeth in her German Garden, which she was famous for, so hence that. And then von Arnim was the surname of her first husband, so that's how we've got it, but her name's Mary. But anyway, Elizabeth is just so good at writing about the outside, and so much of this takes place outside. There's such a funny bit when she goes looking for places to live, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but just let me tell you, it's very, very funny. I love how she describes flowers and orchards and different things like that, and it is just such a wonderful, wonderful book, and yeah, highly recommend it. So there we have it. Those are 3 more books in the British Library Women Writers series. I hope you have enjoyed me chatting about them. I do love this series, and I hope it continues for a very, very long time, because I just adore it. Chat to me all things about this series in the comments below. Have you read the 3 books yet? Are you enjoying the series so far? And are there any authors in particular you'd like to see republished? I'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I shall see you soon. Bye for now.